Hello students. So in earlier class we had finished the first part of the cardiovascular system development, in which we did areas. So the proximal one third of the this was the proximal one third of the bulbous cordis. This, when becomes trabeculated, is going to form the primitive right ventricle, the rough part of the primitive right ventricle or the inflow part, and the primitive ventricular cavity is going to form, when trabeculated, is going to form the primitive left ventricle. So those were the derivatives of the rough parts, right ventricle and the left ventricle, from the bulbous cordis and from the primitive ventricle. Now, which is the smooth part of the outflow part of the ventricles? In the right this is the right ventricular chamber. So with your gross anatomy, now you know what is the outflow part of the right ventricle. This is called as infundibulum of right ventricle. Similarly, in the left ventricle, this part is called as the aortic vestibule of the left ventricle, which is the smooth outflow part of the ventricles on the left side. Both are formed by the conus cordis part, the middle one third of the bulbus cordis. So this is how the smooth part arises. So both rough and smooth part of ventricles are originating from portions of the bulbus cordis, the rough part from the proximal one third and from the primitive ventricle, the outflow part from the conus cordis, the middle one third part of the bulbus cordis. Now we come to the septum formation in the bulbus cordis. So this truncus arteriosus and this conus cordis part, and between the primitive ventricular chamber and the proximal one third of the bulbus cordis, here also a septum will develop. So we'll talk about these three septa in detail. The septum between the two ventricles is called as the interventricular septum. The septum which appears in the truncus arteriosus is the truncal septum, which will separate the aorta from the pulmonary artery. The septum in the conus cordis part is going to divide the outflow part, the smooth part of the right and the left ventricle. So we begin with the first part. This is the distal part of the bulbus cordis, which is the truncus arteriosus, and the derivative of the truncus arteriosus was aorta and pulmonary trunk. So aorta and pulmonary trunk has to be, they are both divided channels as you have seen in the adults also. There is a separate aortic channel and there is a separate pulmonary artery channel. So a septum has to develop in the truncus arteriosus to separate the aortic channel from the pulmonary artery channel. So for that, what happens picture, you can see the relation how the pulmonary trunk is in front and aorta is behind at the proximal part of the truncus arteriosus. Now let's see what happens in the middle portion. In the middle portion where the spiraling has occurred, here the pulmonary trunk is going to go medially and the ascending aorta will become lateral now. This is lateral and the pulmonary trunk has now become medial. So this is the relation of the truncus both the channels of the truncus arteriosus by the formation of the septa. This is the position of the aorticopulmonary septa or the spiral septum or the septum in the truncus arteriosus. Now let us see what happens at the distal end of the truncus arteriosus. At the distal end of the truncus arteriosus, the ascending aorta is in front and the pulmonary trunk goes behind. So the order which was there in the proximal part has now been reversed. So you can see the aorta is in front and the pulmonary trunk has gone behind. So this is the portion, the proximal part or the root part of the pulmonary artery and the aorta, which are formed by the truncus arteriosus. And this is how by the septum formation, both the channels are not only divided, but because of the spiral course, the relation of pulmonary artery with the ascending aorta is changing from its proximal part to the intermediate part to the distal part. So the septum has divided trunk aorta from the pulmonary artery with the relation that we have seen just now. So this is how the after the formation of the spiral septa, the ventricle will look like. So this is the common ventricular chamber, and this is the position of this is the truncus arteriosus, and this was the location of the spiral septa, which has divided. This has been cut along the proximal part of the truncus arteriosus. So this the upper so this is the aorta which is behind, and this is the pulmonary trunk which is in the front. Now we are at the second part of the bulbous cordis, which is the middle part of the bulbous cordis. The middle part of the bulbous cordis is called as the conus cordis. In the picture over here, we can see the approaching ends of the truncal swelling. So the truncal swellings are approaching each other and forming the truncal septum. Similarly, the two conal swellings are also arising, which fuses to form the conal septum. So these are the two conal swellings. These are the, according to their origin from their walls, this is the left ventral conus swelling, and this is the right dorsal conus swelling, which arise from the dorsal and left right dorsal and the left ventral walls of the conus cordis. So this middle part of the bulbous cordis, this is the conus cordis, and these swellings, when they fuse with each other, they are going to create a septum, which is called as the conus septum. Now, what will be the role of the conus septum? Like the truncal septum was dividing aorta from the pulmonary artery. Similarly, the conus septum, because the conus cordis we know is going to form the outflow tract of both the right ventricle and the left ventricle. So by the fusion of these two conal swelling, the outflow tract of the right ventricle will be separated from the outflow tract of the left ventricle. So you can see this arrow, this black arrow is the arrow of the outflow tract of the right ventricle. This will be separated by the dotted line, which is little posterior. This is the outflow tract of the left ventricle, which is going to continue into the aorta. So the outflow tract of the right ventricle is called as the infundibulum, and the left ventricle outflow tract is called as the aortic vestibule. And both will constitute the smooth part of the right and the left ventricle, and we know how the rough part is formed. Rough part is right here, trabeculated portions of both right and left ventricle. So this is how both the septa will appear in this picture we had already seen. Now let's see in this particular model how through the conal part, this right and the left conal cushions, how they arise. Basically, this conal swellings and the conal septa are going to fuse with the truncal septa. So this is how the both conal swellings are appearing in this picture as well. Now the septum, conotruncal septum will be complete when the septum of the truncus arteriosus and the septum of the conus cordis are going to fuse with each other. So this is the channel which is showing the formation of the conotruncal septum. This yellow is the yellow portion is the right conotruncal, and the purplish one is the left conotruncal. So both the conal swellings and the truncal swellings, when they are creating the truncal septum and the conal septum, they are going to fuse together to form the conotruncal septum. This is how the conotruncal septum will appear. And in our department, we have a model which shows the separation of the conotruncal septum. Now, after we have learnt about the conotruncal septum formation, so we know why this is important. The conotruncal septum is important to divide the conus cordis into the outflow tract, and the truncal septum, which was dividing the aorta from the pulmonary artery. Now, there is a role of neural crest cells in the formation of this conotruncal septum. We all know that the neural crest cells are at the edges of the neural folds. And these neural crest cells migrate through the pharyngeal arches 3, 4, and 6 to the outflow region. This is the outflow region of the heart, developing heart. So these neural cells, crest cells, from the edges of the neural folds, they migrate along the pharyngeal arches 3, 4, 6 and reaches the outflow region of the heart and invade this outflow region. Here, what are their functions? They contribute to the formation of endocardial cushion. Endocardial cushions in both conus and truncus arteriosus. That means those conus swellings and truncus swellings which formed the conal septum and the truncal septum and together formed the conotruncal septum. They were formed from the endocardial cushions and they are formed from the neural crest cells. Also, we had learned in our first lecture of CVS part 1 that the secondary heart field are located in the outflow tract. So this is secondary heart field is the reason for the formation of the outflow tract of the developing heart. So they also signals the secondary heart field area. So that means neural crest cells are very important. Any abnormal migration, any abnormality in its proliferation and differentiation of neural crest cells will result in certain abnormalities, and those abnormalities of the heart is called as the outflow tract defects, which are one of the example is tetralogy of Fallot, which is very important. So now we'll see what are those outflow tract defects. So you have seen in this picture and in this demonstration how the neural crest cells are important for the conotruncal formation septum. Now, these neural crest cells, we know the derivatives of neural crest cells, that these neural crest cells also contribute to the craniofacial development. We know through its derivatives, they are important for the craniofacial development. That is why whenever there is cardiac abnormalities, there are associated facial defects. So facial defects and cardiac abnormalities are often seen in the same individual because of the common source, that is the neural crest cells involvement. Now we were talking about the outflow tract defects. So what are those outflow tract defects? These are the tetralogy of Fallot, pulmonary stenosis, the persistent truncus arteriosus, transposition of the great vessel. These are the examples of the outflow tract defects. And the cause of these outflow tract defects, as we have seen, is the neural crest cells. The neural crest cells that were going to form the outflow tract, the septum in the outflow tract, that was the endocardial cushions in the conal part and the truncal part. Also, the secondary heart field if disrupted, because that also leads to the signaling of formation of the outflow tract. So that also leads to the outflow tract defects. And neural crest, because crest cells, they were also signaling this secondary heart field. So these are also causing either by their own disruption or by disruption of the signaling to the secondary heart field can result into these outflow defects. The most common among these outflow defects is the tetralogy of Fallot. Now we come to the other part, which is of our lecture, which is the interventricular septum. So we had seen in this picture, you can see this is the right ventricle, and this is the continuation of the conus cordis and the truncus arteriosus. So we have seen the septum formation, the conotruncal septum, which is formed in the fusion of the truncal septum and the conal septum in the truncus arteriosus and the conus cordis part. Now we talk about the ventricle. So this is the right ventricle, and the opposite side will be the left ventricle. So this is how the interventricular septum is going to form between the two ventricles. In this picture, we can see this is the left ventricle and this one is the right ventricle. And this septum, which is trying to form between the two ventricles, this is the interventricular septum. So let us see the formation of the interventricular septum, which separates the two ventricles. So it has two components. The interventricular septum has a muscular component. This is the muscular part of the interventricular septum, and this gap will be filled by the membranous part of the interventricular septum, which is between the endocardial cushions, AV cushions, and the upper margin of the muscular part of the interventricular septum. Over here should be the formation of the membranous part of the interventricular septum. So in the first lecture, when we saw how were the different types of septum formation, in one of the type we said that the growing, expanding portions of the heart develops, and one of the portion doesn't expand, and that forms a crest-like thing or a ridge that develops into a septum. So there is similar, like in atrial part, the atrial septum. Similarly, over here in the ventricles also, by the end of the 4th weeks, what happens is both the two primitive left ventricle and the primitive right ventricle, they are going to expand. With the continuous expansion, what will happen internally, there will be trabeculae formation, and externally also it is expanding. With the expansion, this less expanded part in the middle part, the interventricular septum, muscular part will develop. So this is the muscular part of interventricular septum, which is going to develop over here. Above the upper margin of the muscular part of the interventricular septum, and this over here is the atrioventricular cushions, atrioventricular septum. Now what happens is the medial wall of the ventricles that we were talking about. This is the medial wall of the ventricles, expanding ventricle. When they are opposed to each other, gradually they merge to create this muscular interventricular septum. This is how the muscular interventricular septum has been formed. Now, what is interventricular foramen? This space which is between the free rim of the muscular septum, interventricular septum, and the fused endo-AV cushions, endocardial cushions, AV cushions. Between them, this space is the interventricular foramen, where there will still be communication between the two ventricles. So our septum formation is still not complete unless this space is also fused together. So in this picture also we can see this is how the muscular part of, this is the muscular part of the interventricular septum. This is how it develops, and this between the fused atrioventricular cushion and the upper margin over here, this is the portion, the space which has left, which has to be filled by the membranous interventricular septum. So the closure of this interventricular foramina, how this closes. So it can be complete in 3 directions. You can see over here, this is the inferior AV cushion, and this is the superior AV cushion. Both have fused together, and this canal is right atrioventricular canal, and this is the left atrioventricular canal. So growth from the inferior endocardial cushion, this blue part, this grows from the, this is an outgrowth from the inferior endocardial cushion, and this blue outgrowth then raises to in the interventricular foramina in the upper direction and forms the one of the component of membranous part of interventricular septum from below. Above, what do we have? Above we have this conal swellings, which are going to form the conal septum, and together with truncal septum, they are going to fuse with the conotruncal septum. So this is the right conal swelling, and this is the left conal swelling. The conal swellings also grow distally. In the second picture, you can say this is the right conal swelling and this is the left conal swelling. So the conal septum also, when they are completing, when they are forming, they are also going to grow distally, and will together will three portions are going to complete are going to completely close the interventricular foramina and will form the membranous part of the interventricular septum above this muscular part of the interventricular septum. So this is how the membranous part of interventricular septum formation will be completed. From the inferior part, this is from the growth of the inferior endocardial cushion outgrowth, and from the superior side, the right dorsal conus swelling and the left ventral conus swelling together. When they fuse with each other, they are going to create the membranous part of interventricular septum. So this picture in a nutshell shows how the interventricular septum has been formed. The muscular, by the expanding ventricles, this muscular part of interventricular septum is formed, leaving the interventricular foramina above the muscular part between the AV cushions and the upper part of the muscular septum. This interventricular foramina is left. This interventricular foramina will be synonymous with the ostium primum and ostium secundum that you had seen in the atrial septal defects. So this interventricular foramina is fused and is closed by the formation of membranous part of the interventricular septum, and these are the contributing factors. The right dorsal conus swelling grows distally, the left ventral conus swelling grows distally, and cranially grows the inferior endocardial cushion outgrowth. So together, this is the component of the membranous part of interventricular septum. So this, let us see this with the model that we have in our department. So over here, when we saw this fused endocardial cushion, these were the two channels, right and the left atrioventricular orifice. So over here, we can see this channel over here. This is the right atrioventricular orifice. And if we go pass a probe inside, that will be the left atrioventricular orifice, and right atrioventricular orifice. Now, this portion, this purplish portion, this is the opened right ventricle wall. So this portion is the interventricular septum. Which part of the interventricular septum? This will be the muscular part of the interventricular septum. The upper margin of the muscular part of the interventricular septum, and this will correspond to the area of the AV cushion. This is the area which is called as the interventricular foramina. So you can see this is the interventricular foramina. This will be closed by these three swellings. How these three swellings are arising? From the right conal swelling and the left conal swelling, the yellow and the purple over here, and this blue part, which is the proliferation of the inferior atrioventricular cushion. Together, they are going to close this interventricular foramina and will form the membranous part of interventricular septum. So let us see over here the model that we have in our department. So this red will be represented by the right conal swelling, and this is the blue is the left conal swelling, and this yellow part will be the inferior endocardial cushion outgrowth. So this is now complete formation of the membranous part of the interventricular septum, and this was the muscular part of the interventricular septum. This is how it will appear. Right conus cushion, the left conus cushion, and the inferior endocardial AV cushion outgrowth forming the membranous interventricular septum, and below this is the muscular interventricular septum. Now, the word about the semilunar valve. So when partitioning of the truncus is complete, at that particular time, the primordia of the semilunar valve become visible as small tubercles, one of each pair of pulmonary and aortic channels. So there will be separate tubercles appearing for the aortic channel and for the pulmonary artery. And gradually these tubercles gradually will be hallowed from its upper surface, and this is how the valves will appear. The semilunar valves of aorta and pulmonary trunk will appear. So this is how the valve in the region of aorta and pulmonary trunk appears. This again is a picture which shows the two left and the right ventricle, and this is the muscular part of the interventricular septum, and this area is the upper area is the muscular part, the membranous part of the interventricular septum. Now we come to the applied aspect of today's lecture, which are the congenital abnormalities of the heart. We have seen that this is around 1/4 of all the developmental abnormalities, and more common in the children with the consanguineous marriages. The most commonly affected cardiac abnormalities is the ventricular septal defect, followed by atrial septal defect and Fallot's tetralogy. So this is the relative proportion of the cardiac anomalies. So now we come to the ventricular septal defect. So now we know that how this is a normal interventricular septa, how this muscular and the membranous part of the interventricular septum is formed. The ventricular septal defects, this is the second picture which shows the ventricular septal defect. So this is the most common congenital cardiac malformation, and isolated cases are 12 per 10,000 births, and they may be associated with other cardiac defects also. So what happens is when the muscular part of the there is a defect at the muscular part of the interventricular septum. These are milder cases, and 80% of these type of VSDs will resolve as the child grows. But the membranous VSDs, that is when there is the defect at the level of the membranous part of interventricular septum, these are more severe cases in which the partitioning of, that means the partitioning of the it is associated with the abnormalities in the partitioning of the conotruncal region, because the conotruncal region was the portion which was going to contribute to the formation of the membranous part of the interventricular septum. And this part may appear alone, or it may have a persistent interventricular foramen. So this interventricular foramen will remain persistent in cases of membranous type of VSDs. Now, this is just a brief to show you that we had already done how this membranous part of the VSD will. So whenever a question comes of applied aspect, if you have to describe VSD, you have to give in detail, give a little bit detail of the formation of the interventricular septum first, and then you will talk about the ventricular septal defect. Same follows for any embryological correlation, embryological basis when you are asked. So what will be the effects of VSD? Because of the ventricular septal defect, there will be a patent interventricular foramina. And so because of this patent interventricular foramina, what will happen, that the pulmonary artery has to take blood from the right ventricle. So there will be a shunting of blood, intermixing of blood, and there are chances that the pulmonary artery may carry more 1 to 1.2 to 1.7 times more blood as compared to the aorta. The AV bundle location is also alongside. So AV bundle and its left and the right limbs will also pass along the upper margin of the opening, ventricular septal opening. So these were the outflow tract defects that we were discussing. Now let us see these outflow tract defects in detail. Fallot's tetralogy or tetralogy of Fallot, this is quite important for you. So let us see how these all outflow abnormalities. So these outflow abnormalities are basically involved in the region of conotruncal septum. So this is just a recap of what we studied about the conotruncal septum, the truncal and the conal septum, which together formed the conotruncal septum. And this is the aorticopulmonary septum, which divided the aortic channel from the pulmonary channel. Now this we had done in detail how the relation changed from the proximal middle and the distal area of the truncus arteriosus. This is just a representation to show what is happening at the level of the Fallot's tetralogy. Now compare these two pictures. This is the level of the septum, the spiral septum, which is dividing the truncus arteriosus into equal half. The frontal part, the anterior part, which is the pulmonary trunk, and the dorsal part, which is the ascending aorta. So what happens if this conotruncal septum is migrated, is displaced anteriorly? This is the arrow which is denoting the migration or the displacement of the conotruncal septum in an anterior direction. So this septum, instead of being in the middle, it has displaced anteriorly. So what will happen? There will be unequal division of truncus arteriosus into a larger aorta and a smaller pulmonary artery. This unequal division of the conus, which happens, leads to the formation of pulmonary stenosis. So you can see the pulmonary artery is stenosed. This is one of the congenital tetralogy. So that means we have to have 4 cardiac defects. So 4 cardiac defects together we call the Fallot's tetralogy. So in this, pulmonary stenosis will appear because of the anterior displacement of the conotruncal septum. So pulmonary stenosis happens. This is most frequently encountered, 9.6 per 10,000 births. So unequal division of conus, this is what happened. So this is how one of the effect will be the pulmonary stenosis. Now pulmonary stenosis, after this pulmonary stenosis, what will happen? This is aorta. This aorta will override the right ventricle also. So right ventricle ke aage kya hona chahiye tha? This should have been the pulmonary artery. And left ventricle ke aage, this should be in continuation, should be the aorta. But what happens because of the pulmonary stenosis, the aorta will override the right ventricle also. So right ventricle will also be in continuation with the aorta. This is called as overriding of aorta. So these, remember, these are the 4 defects, associated defects with the Fallot's tetralogy, 4 effects and or defects. This you should learn. This is quite commonly asked. So first was the pulmonary stenosis, the narrowing of the right ventricular outflow because of the anterior displacement of the conotruncal septum. The aorta overrides, that is directly arises above the septal defect. This aorta is going to directly arise above the septal defect. This is the meaning of overriding of aorta. And there is associated ventricular septal defect. Now, why this ventricular septal defect is happening? Because this is a defect involving the conotruncal septum. Conotruncal septum was the area from where the membranous part was also taking its formation. So this is associated with the ventricular septal defect. Now, because of this, because there will be higher pressure of, because there will be higher pressure on the right side, there will be hypertrophy of the right ventricular wall. So this is associated with the, otherwise normally what happens is left ventricular wall is more thicker as compared to the right, but here there is hypertrophy of a right ventricular wall because more pressure will be applied for the blood to pass through the pulmonary stenosed area. So there is hypertrophy of the right ventricular wall. So these are the 4 defects associated with Fallot's: pulmonary stenosis, overriding aorta, ventricular septal defect, and hypertrophy of right ventricular wall. Remember this 4 defects by this diagram. You can see over here also. Now, what will be the patient coming as a symptom? The patient will arise with cyanosis, bluing, because the venous blood shunts from the right to left ventricle. The venous blood from here will shunt towards the left ventricle, and the left ventricle, which is carrying the oxygenated blood through aorta, there will be mixing of blood. So the child will present with the symptom of cyanosis. These are the other types which are when the in the Fallot's, when there is no mixing, the cyanosis is not going to develop, and that is called as the acyanotic type of Fallot. There is a term called Fallot's pentology when it is associated with atrial septal defect as well. There is Fallot's triology also if the pulmonary stenosis due to the fusion of valves is associated with hypertrophy of right ventricle and atrial septal defects. The condition is called as the Fallot's tetralogy. So you have only the pulmonary stenosis, hypertrophy of right ventricle, and atrial septal defect. Now we come to the second part, which is the persistent truncus arteriosus. This has the lesser incidence of 0.8 per 10,000 live births, and this is because of the failure of formation of conotruncal septum. So conotruncal septum has not at all formed. If the conotruncal septum has not formed, then what will happen? The truncus arteriosus will not be partitioned. So this is the truncus arteriosus part, which had to develop into the proximal part of the aorta and the pulmonary artery. So this part has not formed. So the pulmonary artery and the aorta proximal portions will be fused together. They will be a common truncus. So this is also called as the common truncus arteriosus. So because there is no formation of conotruncal septa, the conotruncal region, the truncus arteriosus, will not divide into aorta and pulmonary trunk, and there will be a common truncus arteriosus. This is known as the persistent truncus arteriosus. The rest of the portion of the aorta and pulmonary trunk will be there, but the proximal part will not be separated with each other. And the conotruncal, as we know, is also contributing to the formation of membranous part of the interventricular septum defect. So most of all these outflow tract defects or the conotruncal septal defects will be associated with the VSDs. Ventricular septal defects will be found in all. So this is the associated ventricular septal defects. So the truncus over here, what is happening? The truncus is overriding both the ventricles and receiving the blood from both the sides. So this is receiving the blood from both the sides, the truncus arteriosus, in the persistent truncus arteriosus. The third variety is the transposition of great vessels. So what will happen is the conotruncal septum is definitely formed, but the spiraling, this is the normal course of the aorticopulmonary septum or the conotruncal septum, that it has to spiral. If the conotruncal septum failed to follow its normal spiral course, but instead of spiraling, what happens? It goes straight. The septum goes straight, like the straightness of the interventricular septum or the interatrial or interventricular septum. If this conotruncal septum is not spiraled, it is straight, then what will happen? The aorta will arise from the right ventricle, and the pulmonary artery will arise from the left ventricle. That means both the septum is definitely there because there is a separate channel for aorta, there is a separate channel for pulmonary artery, but the spiraling has not occurred. So there is interchange of the position, the great vessel, that is called as the transposition of the great vessels. The aorta arising from the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery arising from the left ventricle. Now, in the transposition of great vessels, there is very rare chances that you will have interventricular septal defect because the conotruncal septum has formed, but therefore it will be rarely associated with the defect in the membranous part of the interventricular septum, but it is associated with the patent ductus arteriosus. Now let us see what is happening in the normal heart. This is the normal heart and this is the pulmonary artery channel and this is the aortic channel. This the conotruncal septum has followed the spiral course. So because of the spiraling at the which we had done in the during the development part, what is happening? This is the fetal autopsy in our department that we did in a normal heart. This is showing a normal heart. So what is there? In the proximal part of the truncus, this pulmonary artery was in front and the aorta was behind. In the middle part, the aorta was onto the lateral side and the pulmonary artery was onto the medial side. And in above the distal part, the aorta becomes in front and the pulmonary artery goes behind. This is showing the normal relation of the course of the, because of the spiral course of the conotruncal septum. But in during fetal autopsy, one of the case that we found was of the transposition of great vessels. So what is happening in this transposition of great vessels? There is exchange of position. So this aorta is arising from the right ventricle and the pulmonary trunk is arising from the left ventricle. So the spiral course of the septum is not there. So this is the probe which has been passed through the aorta. You can see the aortic arch. This is the aortic arch and the branches from the aortic arch also. This is the ascending part of the aorta. So you can see from the right ventricle is arising the aorta and the pulmonary artery is arising from the left ventricle. This is the case of transposition of great vessels that we found during the fetal autopsy in our department. Now see the relation of the relation which should be, the pulmonary trunk should be in front and the aorta behind. This is also reversed over here. They are acting like straight channels over here. The relation is also disturbed. So this is the transposition of great vessels. There is a sequence, D-George sequence, which is actually genetically the microdeletions of the chromosome 22. And this is characterized by pattern of malformations that have origin in the abnormal neural crest development. So this is a neural crest development abnormality. And we said because the neural crest also has to form the facial development of the face. So the patient is going to come with the facial defects also. And these are the associated other defects in the D-George sequence, and the cardiac abnormality which involves the outflow tract, because the neural crest cells were also forming the conal cushions and the truncal cushions, the formation of the conotruncal septum. So they will be persistent truncus arteriosus and Fallot tetralogy in the D-George sequence. Now we come to the last part, which is the valvular stenosis of pulmonary artery or valvular stenosis of aorta. When the semilunar valves are fused, this leads to the valvular stenosis. Now let us summarize the conotruncal septal defects, the outflow tract defects. The first picture, this is showing, this is the line of conotruncal septum. When it is displaced anteriorly, anterior displacement of conotruncal septum, this is going to lead to tetralogy of Fallot. When there is absence of conotruncal septum, there is no conotruncal septum, this is going to lead to persistent truncus arteriosus. The third condition, when the positioning is central, the conotruncal septum has formed, but there is absence of the spiraling of conotruncal septum. This is the condition which is called as the transposition of great vessels. So this shows the summary of all the conotruncal septum defect. And the most common, the tetralogy of Fallot, that you should learn by heart. Now coming to the pulmonary stenosis. The pulmonary stenosis means the narrowing of the pulmonary artery. In the pulmonary stenosis cases, there will be patent foramen ovale because that will be the only outlet of the blood from the right side of the heart, because it has completely stenosed. So right ventricular, the right ventricular outflow is disturbed. So the whatever blood is there in the right side is going to pass through the left area through the patent foramen ovale. Also, it is associated with the patent ductus arteriosus. This we'll learn in the third part of our lecture, CVS development. Now coming to the aortic stenosis when the valves thickened, the fusion of the thickened valves is taking place, and aortic stenosis may, the aorta is so much stenosed that it appears only as a pinhole opening. Only the pinhole opening of the aorta is remaining. And there could be aortic valvular atresia when this fusion is complete. This is associated also with the patent ductus arteriosus, from where the blood will be, which delivers the blood into the aorta. Now at the end, let us see this quiz in which is showing the septum development not only in the ventricular region but in the truncus region as well. So try to identify this septum which is in the truncal region. Try to identify this area which is in the interventricular foramen. This is covered the closed the interventricular foramen and this area. This is the answer. In the conotruncal region, this is the spiral septum, the conotruncal septum, aorticopulmonary septum, dividing the aortic and the pulmonary channels. This is the membranous interventricular septum, where the red part is the right conus cushion, blue part is the left conus cushion, and the yellow should be the inferior endocardial cushion, AV cushion, together forming the membranous interventricular septum. And this is the muscular interventricular septum. Thank you.